What would you do if you caught someone smashing history for clout? In the scorching desert of a small village, HOA strutted onto the archaeological dig site, her khaki hat tilted just so, sunglasses gleaming, and a smirk that screamed she owned the place. She wasn't there to unearth history, she was there to haggle, to prove the artifacts were worthless so she could buy them cheap. Locals whispered about her, this so-called archaeologist with no credentials, but a loud voice and a knack for drama. Her plan? Break a few pots, call them fakes, and walk away with priceless relics for pennies. But the desert has a way of exposing liars, and Hoa's scheme was about to crumble like the clay she so carelessly shattered. HOA arrived at the dig site with a camera crew trailing her, their lenses capturing every move as she waved her hands over the unearthed pottery. "These are nothing," she declared, picking up a delicate vase etched with ancient symbols. "Cheap fakes, not worth a dime." Before anyone could stop her, she smashed it against a rock, the pieces scattering like dust in the wind. Gasps echoed from the workers, a mix of local villagers and trained archaeologists who'd spent months carefully excavating the site. HOA didn't care. She grabbed another artifact, a small statue of a fertility goddess, and tossed it to the ground, laughing as it cracked. Her crew zoomed in, framing her as the bold truth-teller exposing a scam. But the villagers weren't buying it. One elderly man, Tuan, who'd grown up hearing stories of these relics from his grandmother, clenched his fists. "Those are our history," he muttered, his voice trembling with rage. The truth began to unravel when Hoa's theatrics caught the eye of Dr. Lin, a quiet but sharp-witted archaeologist overseeing the dig. Lin had been suspicious of HOA from the start. Her credentials were vague, her knowledge of history laughably shallow. Lin had stayed silent, watching Hoa's performance, but the destruction of the artifacts was too much. She stepped forward, her voice steady but cutting. "You claim these are fakes, but you haven't even tested them. Why are you so eager to destroy what you don't understand?" HOA scoffed, brushing off the question, but Lin wasn't done. She pulled out her phone and showed a grainy video she'd received that morning, a tip from an anonymous source. It showed HOA in a nearby market, haggling with a shady dealer for authentic-looking replicas to plant at the site. The crowd gasped again, this time at Hoa's audacity. She'd brought her own fakes to swap with the real artifacts, planning to sell the originals to private collectors. The twist came from an unexpected source. Min, a teenage volunteer at the dig, who'd been quietly filming Hoa's antics on his phone. Min was no archaeologist, just a kid passionate about history, but he'd noticed something off about Hoa's fakes. The pottery she smashed didn't break like cheap replicas, it shattered with the weight and texture of aged clay. Min uploaded his footage to social media, tagging local historians and news outlets. Within hours, the video went viral, with captions like "Fake archaeologist caught red-handed" and "Hoa destroys history for profit." The internet erupted, and Hoa's camera crew, sensing the tide turning, began to pack up, leaving her to face the growing crowd alone. The confrontation reached its peak as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the dig site. Tuan, the elderly villager, stepped forward, his voice now booming with authority. "You came here to steal our past," he said, pointing at the broken artifacts. "You thought we wouldn't notice, but this is our home, our story." The crowd closed in, not with violence, but with questions, their phones recording every word. HOA stammered, her confidence cracking like the pottery at her feet. Lin joined Tuan, holding up one of the fakes HOA had planted. "This is plastic," Lin said, tossing it to the ground where it bounced, unlike the heavy clay of the real artifacts. The crowd roared with laughter, the sound echoing across the desert. Hoa's face flushed red, her scheme exposed in front of the very people she'd tried to deceive. Then came the collapse. Min's video had reached a prominent historian in the capital who arrived at the site with a team of experts. They tested the remaining artifacts, confirming their authenticity and their immense cultural value. Hoa's planted fakes were laughably obvious under scrutiny, their glossy finish and cheap materials standing out like sore thumbs. The historian publicly denounced HOA, calling her actions a disgrace to archaeology and a theft from humanity. Social media piled on, with memes and hashtags like Hoa the Fake trending worldwide. Hoa's name became synonymous with greed and ignorance. Her camera crew abandoned her completely, and the collectors she'd hoped to sell to cut ties, unwilling to touch her tainted reputation. Alone and humiliated, HOA fled the site, her khaki hat forgotten in the dust. But the story didn't end with Hoa's downfall. The village rallied, turning the dig site into a community project. Tuan and Min worked side by side with Lin, cataloging the remaining artifacts and sharing their stories with the world. The viral video brought donations pouring in, funding a small museum to preserve the relics HOA had tried to steal. Lin gave Min a scholarship to study archaeology, and Tuan's tales of his grandmother's legends became the museum's centerpiece. The desert, once scarred by Hoa's destruction, bloomed with pride and purpose. The villagers' resilience proved stronger than any lie, their history now celebrated, not sold. What do you think? Can greed ever justify tampering with history? Or is the truth always worth fighting for? Share your thoughts.